Dr. Samuel Carter had always been a man of routine. After decades of serving as a military doctor, he had finally settled into the quiet rhythm of retirement in a small town nestled between rolling hills. His days were predictable. Early morning, walks, tending to minor injuries at the local hospital, and evenings spent sipping coffee on his porch while watching the sun dip below the horizon. It was a peaceful life, far removed from the chaos of the battlefield. But peace, Samuel would soon learn, is often fleeting. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze, Samuel noticed something unusual on his usual route. A man stumbled along the road clutching his side. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining his shirt a deep crimson. Without hesitation, Samuel rushed forward, his instincts kicking in. "Stay with me," he said firmly, kneeling beside the stranger. The man groaned, his face pale and sweat-drenched. "They're coming," he mumbled weakly before collapsing. Samuel didn't have time to ask questions. He helped the man into his car and drove straight to the hospital, his mind racing. Who was this man? What had happened to him? And who, or what, was coming? These thoughts buzzed in the back of his mind as he focused on saving the stranger's life. Once at the hospital, Samuel took charge, barking orders like old times. Nurses scrambled to assist as he operated skillfully, patching up the gunshot wound that had nearly claimed the man's life. When the surgery was over, Samuel allowed himself a moment to breathe. The stranger, now stable, lay unconscious in a recovery bed. Samuel studied him closely, his worn clothes, the dirt smudged across his face, the haunted look even in sleep. There was something about him that felt off, not dangerous, necessarily, but complicated. As if sensing Samuel's scrutiny, the man stirred, opening his eyes slowly. For a brief moment, their gazes locked, and Samuel saw gratitude mixed with fear. "Thank you," the man rasped, his voice barely audible. "You saved my life." Samuel nodded, brushing off the thanks with practiced ease. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The man hesitated before answering. "Alex," he said. Then after a pause, he added, "I didn't mean to bring trouble here, but they're close. Too close." Samuel frowned, leaning closer. "Who's close? What are you talking about?" Alex glanced toward the door, as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "They'll kill me if they find me," he whispered urgently. "And anyone who helps me." Before Samuel could press further, Alex closed his eyes, exhaustion overtaking him once again. Leaving the room, Samuel stood in the hallway, his thoughts swirling. Trouble wasn't something he'd expected in his quiet little town. Yet here, it was lying in one of his hospital beds, bleeding and scared. Over the next few hours, Samuel wrestled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he was a doctor, a healer bound by an oath to save lives no matter the circumstances. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the warning signs. Something big was happening, and Alex was at the center of it. Should he report the situation to the authorities? Or should he trust his instincts and protect the man who had appeared out of nowhere? As night fell, Samuel made his decision. Whatever Alex was involved in, whatever danger loomed, Samuel couldn't turn his back on someone in need. Not now, not ever. He returned to Alex's bedside, finding him awake and alert. "Listen to me," Samuel said quietly. "I don't know who you are or what you've done, but I'm going to help you, for now. Understand?" Alex nodded, relief washing over his features. "You won't regret this," he promised. "I swear." But Samuel wasn't so sure. Even as he spoke, he felt a chill run down his spine, as if unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. Little did he know his choice to help Alex would set off a chain of events that would shatter the tranquility of his retired life forever. For now, though, the hospital remained quiet, its halls bathed in the soft glow of fluorescent lights. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and perhaps the distant echo of footsteps drawing nearer. The morning after Alex's arrival, the hospital buzzed with its usual activity. Nurses bustled between rooms. Doctors exchanged updates in hushed tones, and the faint hum of medical equipment filled the air. Dr. Samuel Carter walked through the halls, his mind replaying the events of the previous night. He had saved a stranger's life, but something about the situation gnawed at him. Alex's cryptic warning about being chased lingered in Samuel's thoughts. Who was chasing him? And why? Despite his years of experience, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. As Samuel made his rounds, he noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere. The receptionist seemed unusually tense, glancing toward the entrance every few minutes. A couple of nurses whispered nervously near the coffee machine, their conversation halting abruptly when Samuel approached. At first, he dismissed it as typical workplace chatter, but the unease in their expressions caught his attention. When he asked if everything was all right, they simply nodded and hurried away, leaving him more puzzled than before. By mid-morning, the tension escalated. A group of soldiers arrived unannounced, their boots echoing loudly against the tiled floors. They moved with precision, spreading out across the lobby and blocking exits. Patients and visitors froze, unsure of what to do. Some tried to leave, only to be stopped by stern-faced soldiers who instructed them to remain calm and stay put. The commanding officer stepped forward, his voice cutting through the growing panic. "We're conducting an operation," he announced firmly. "No one is allowed to leave until further notice." Samuel felt a chill run down his spine. He knew this wasn't a routine visit. Military personnel didn't just show up at small-town hospitals unless there was a serious reason. His thoughts immediately turned to Alex. Was this connected to him? Had someone traced Alex's steps here? The question swirled in Samuel's mind as he approached the officer. "What's going on?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The officer studied him for a moment before replying. "We're searching for a fugitive," he said. "Someone who may pose a threat to national security." The words hit Samuel like a punch to the gut. National security? That sounded far beyond anything he'd anticipated. He thought back to Alex's injuries and his vague mention of being chased. Could Alex really be involved in something so dangerous? Samuel struggled to reconcile the image of the wounded man he'd treated with the idea of a fugitive, tied to such high-stakes circumstances. Still, he couldn't ignore the possibility. If Alex was indeed the person the soldiers were looking for, then helping him might have put not only himself but also the entire hospital in jeopardy. The soldiers began questioning everyone, staff, patients, even visitors. They asked about recent arrivals, unusual behavior, and anyone who might have come seeking treatment under suspicious circumstances. Samuel watched as fear spread among the people around him. Nurses fidgeted nervously as they recounted their shifts, while patients glanced at each other unsure of what to say. Some tried to play dumb, claiming ignorance, while others eagerly shared details, hoping to curry favor with the authorities. It was clear that no one wanted to get caught in the crossfire. When the soldiers finally turned their attention to Samuel, he braced himself. As a retired military doctor, he understood the gravity of the situation and the weight of their scrutiny. The officer questioned him closely, asking about the gunshot wound case from the previous night. "Who was the patient?" he pressed. "Where did they go afterward?" Samuel hesitated, weighing his options. Telling the truth could expose Alex and potentially escalate the situation, but lying outright might make things worse. In the end, he chose a middle ground. "I treated a man for a gunshot wound last night," Samuel admitted cautiously. "But I don't know where he went after that." He kept his tone neutral, avoiding any hint of defensiveness. The officer narrowed his eyes, clearly skeptical. "You expect me to believe you didn't ask any questions?" he challenged. Samuel shrugged, feigning indifference. "He left as soon as he was stable," he replied. "I didn't see the need to pry." The officer stared at him for a long moment, searching for signs of deception. Samuel held his gaze, careful not to flinch or give anything away. Finally, the officer nodded curtly and moved on, though Samuel could tell he wasn't entirely convinced. As the interrogation continued, Samuel retreated to his office, his mind racing. He needed to figure out what to do next, and fast. If Alex was still nearby. The soldiers would find him sooner or later. Staying hidden in a place like this was nearly impossible, especially with so many people under surveillance. While Samuel mulled over his predicament, he overheard snippets of conversation that raised his suspicions further. One nurse mentioned seeing a man matching Alex's description sneaking into the supply closet earlier that morning. Another employee claimed to have spotted someone lingering near the back exit. Each tidbit added another layer of complexity to the situation, making it harder for Samuel to decide whom to trust. Was Alex still hiding somewhere in the hospital, relying on Samuel to protect him? Or had he already fled, leaving Samuel to face the consequences alone? As the hours ticked by, the pressure mounted. Soldiers combed through every corner of the building, checking closets, bathrooms, and even the roof. Their thoroughness left no room for error, and Samuel knew it was only a matter of time before they uncovered something, or someone. Meanwhile, the staff grew increasingly agitated. Some openly criticized the soldiers' heavy-handed tactics, while others grumbled about the disruption to their work. A few even speculated about what kind of person could warrant such an intense manhunt. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and uncertainty. Despite the chaos, Samuel remained focused. He knew panicking wouldn't help anyone. Instead, he used the time to think strategically. If Alex was still in the hospital, he needed a way to warn him without drawing attention to himself. But how? Every move he made was being watched, and the soldiers seemed determined to leave no stone unturned. Just as Samuel was beginning to feel trapped, inspiration struck. There was one area of the hospital that hadn't been searched yet, a rarely used storage room tucked away in the basement. If Alex had managed to slip past the soldiers, that was likely where he'd gone. With renewed determination, Samuel devised a plan. He waited until the soldiers were occupied elsewhere, then casually strolled toward the staircase leading to the basement. His heart pounded as he descended the steps, each creak of the old wood sounding impossibly loud in the silence. When he reached the storage room, he paused, listening carefully for any sign of movement. For a moment he thought he might have been wrong, but then he heard it, the faint sound of breathing coming from inside. Steeling himself, Samuel pushed open the door and stepped inside. There, huddled in the shadows, was Alex. His face was pale, his body trembling slightly as he clutched his side. Relief washed over him when he saw Samuel, but it quickly gave way to anxiety. "They're everywhere," Alex whispered hoarsely. "I don't know how much longer I can stay hidden." Samuel nodded grimly, closing the door behind him. "We need to figure something out," he said, "and fast." Together they began brainstorming ideas, knowing that time was running out. Outside, the soldiers continued their relentless search, unaware that the man they sought was hiding, mere feet away, protected by a retired doctor who refused to give up. The next day started like any other, with the sun rising over the hills and casting golden light across the sleepy town. Dr. Samuel Carter arrived at the hospital early, as usual, carrying a thermos of coffee and a bag filled with notes he planned to review during his shift. The quiet calm of the morning was broken when a convoy of military vehicles rolled into view, their tires crunching against the gravel parking lot. Soldiers poured out, their movements sharp and precise, weapons slung across their shoulders. Within minutes, the hospital was surrounded, its doors blocked by armed guards who stood rigidly in place. Samuel stepped outside, his heart pounding but his expression calm. He approached the nearest soldier, a young man whose face was obscured by a helmet. "What's going on?" Samuel asked, his voice firm yet polite. The soldier didn't respond, instead nodding toward an officer marching toward them. The officer, tall and broad-shouldered, carried an air of authority that demanded attention. His eyes scanned Samuel from head to toe before he spoke. "We're looking for someone," the officer said curtly. "A fugitive. We have reason to believe they may be here." Samuel's mind raced. He thought of Alex, the mysterious stranger he'd saved just hours earlier. Could this be connected? The officer continued, explaining that the person they were searching for was linked to national security threats. Samuel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had spent years serving his country, following orders without question. But now he found himself caught between duty and morality. If Alex really was involved in something dangerous, shouldn't Samuel cooperate fully? But if Alex was innocent, or worse, being framed, turning him over could mean disaster. Inside the hospital, chaos erupted as soldiers began questioning staff and patients alike. Nurses whispered nervously in corners while frightened visitors clung to their loved ones. Samuel watched it all unfold, feeling torn. When the officers finally cornered him for a more detailed interrogation, he remained composed, answering their questions carefully. They grilled him about Alex, asking where he had gone and whether Samuel knew anything about his background. Samuel hesitated, choosing his words deliberately. "I treated him for a gunshot wound," he admitted. "But I don't know where he went after that." The officer wasn't satisfied. "You're a retired military doctor," he pointed out, his tone accusatory. "Don't play dumb with us, you must know more than you're letting on." Samuel bristled at the implication but kept his emotions in check. He shrugged casually, pretending to be unfazed. "All I did was patch him up," he replied. "He left before I could ask anything else." The officer studied him for a moment, clearly skeptical, but eventually moved on to question others. As the day dragged on, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Soldiers searched every room, rifling through drawers and closets as though expecting to find Alex hiding under a pile of blankets. Patients complained loudly about the invasion of privacy, while doctors argued with the soldiers, insisting that such actions were unacceptable in a medical facility. Samuel tried to mediate, stepping in whenever tensions flared, but even he couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. Something about this operation felt off. Why would so many soldiers descend on a small-town hospital unless they believed Alex posed a serious threat? Samuel's suspicions deepened when he noticed unusual behavior among some of the hospital staff. One nurse, usually cheerful and talkative, avoided eye contact and seemed unusually jumpy. Another employee kept glancing at his phone, typing furiously before slipping away to speak privately with one of the soldiers. It didn't take long for Samuel to piece together what was happening. Someone inside the hospital was feeding information to the military. Whoever it was, they weren't working alone. This was bigger than just finding Alex. It was part of a larger effort to silence him. Despite the mounting pressure, Samuel refused to give in to fear. Instead, he focused on gathering clues. He struck up casual conversations with colleagues, listening closely for hints or inconsistencies in their stories. He also paid attention to the soldiers' movements, noting which areas they searched most thoroughly, and how often they communicated with their superiors via radio. Each detail added another piece to the puzzle, helping Samuel form a clearer picture of what was really going on. By late afternoon, exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. The soldiers showed no signs of leaving, and the hospital staff struggled to maintain order amidst the disruption. Samuel retreated to his office for a brief break, closing the door behind him. Slumping into his chair, he stared blankly at the wall, replaying the events of the past 24 hours in his mind. Saving Alex had seemed straightforward at first, a simple act of kindness, but now it felt like stepping into a minefield. Every decision he made carried consequences, not just for himself but for countless others. Just as Samuel was beginning to lose hope, a soft knock sounded at his door. Startled, he called out, "Come in." To his surprise, Alex slipped inside, shutting the door quickly behind him. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he leaned against the wall. "I need your help again," Alex whispered urgently. Samuel froze, torn between anger and compassion. Part of him wanted to turn Alex away, to protect himself from further involvement, but another part couldn't ignore the desperation in Alex's voice. "Why should I trust you?" Samuel asked, his tone sharper than intended. Alex winced but didn't back down. "Because I'm telling the truth," he insisted. "Everything I told you before, it's real. I didn't do what they're accusing me of. I'm being set up." Samuel studied him carefully, searching for signs of deception, but all he saw was fear. and perhaps a glimmer of honesty buried beneath it. Against his better judgment, Samuel nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "Tell me everything." Over. The next hour, Alex revealed fragments of his story, piecing together a narrative that painted a chilling picture. He claimed to have been part of a covert operation tasked with investigating corruption within high-ranking government circles. When evidence surfaced implicating powerful individuals, Alex's team was ambushed, leaving him as the sole survivor. Now those same corrupt officials were framing him as a traitor, using the military to hunt him down. Samuel listened intently, his skepticism fading with each word. Though much of Alex's tale sounded far-fetched, there was an undeniable ring of truth to it. When Alex finished speaking, Samuel sat in silence, processing everything he'd heard. He knew helping Alex would put his own life at risk, but doing nothing felt equally wrong. In that moment, Samuel made a choice. Whether driven by instinct, loyalty to his oath as a doctor, or sheer stubbornness, he decided to stand by Alex. Together, they began planning their next move, knowing full well that time was running out. Outside, the soldiers continued their relentless search, unaware that the man they sought was hiding mere feet away, protected by a retired doctor determined to uncover the truth. Samuel realized that staying passive wasn't an option anymore. He needed allies, people he could trust to help navigate this dangerous situation. As he thought about who might assist him, one name came to mind: General Harper, an old friend from his military days. Known for her integrity and sharp instincts, she was someone who might be able to shed light on the conspiracy Alex described. But reaching out to her wouldn't be easy. Contacting anyone outside the hospital risked tipping off the soldiers or whoever was leaking information from within. Still, Samuel knew he had to try. That evening, as darkness fell and the hospital settled into an uneasy quiet, Samuel snuck into an empty supply closet. Pulling out his phone, he sent a brief, coded message to General Harper. He didn't reveal too much, careful to avoid raising suspicion if the message was intercepted. All he wrote was, "Need your help urgently. Possible corruption cover-up involving active ops. Can we talk?" Within minutes, his phone buzzed with a reply. "Stay safe, I'll look into it." Relieved but still wary, Samuel returned to his duties, keeping up appearances while secretly preparing for whatever came next. Meanwhile, Alex remained hidden in the storage room, relying on Samuel to keep him safe. Every sound outside, the clatter of boots, the murmur of voices, set their nerves on edge. Neither of them dared to sleep, knowing that discovery was only a matter of time. As the night wore on, Samuel reflected on how quickly his life had changed. Just 2 days ago, he had been content with his quiet routine, tending to minor injuries and enjoying the peace of retirement. Now he was embroiled in a web of lies, danger, and betrayal. Yet, strangely, he felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. The adrenaline coursing through his veins reminded him of his time in the military, when every decision mattered and lives hung in the balance. This time, however, it wasn't just about following orders. It was about doing what was right no matter the cost. The hours crept by, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, just before dawn, Samuel received another message from General Harper. She confirmed that irregularities had been flagged in recent operations, though details were scarce. More importantly, she promised to send reinforcements to ensure Alex's safety. For the first time since the soldiers arrived, Samuel allowed himself a flicker of hope. But he knew the hardest part was yet to come. With enemies closing in and trust in short supply, one wrong move could spell disaster for everyone involved. The early hours of the morning brought a cold chill to the hospital, both outside and within its walls. Dr. Samuel Carter sat in his dimly lit office, staring at the faint glow of his phone as he waited for any update from General Harper. The message she had sent earlier that reinforcements were on the way was vague but enough to keep Samuel's spirits afloat. Still, hope was a fragile thing, especially when surrounded by soldiers who seemed determined to tear the hospital apart, piece by piece. Outside, the military presence showed no signs of easing. Soldiers patrolled the corridors with flashlights, their boots echoing ominously against the tiled floors. Every shadow seemed suspect, every sound a potential lead. Patients and staff huddled together in fear, whispering about what might happen next. Some begged to leave only to be turned away by stern-faced guards. Others tried to distract themselves by reading or watching TV, though their eyes darted nervously toward the door whenever footsteps approached. It felt less like a hospital and more like a prison under siege. Samuel knew time was running out. If Alex stayed hidden much longer, it would become impossible to protect him without exposing himself. Worse still, whoever inside the hospital was leaking information could tip off the soldiers at any moment. Each passing second increased the risk of discovery. Samuel decided he needed to act quickly. He slipped out of his office and made his way to the storage room where Alex was hiding. The journey felt endless, each step heavier than the last, as if the weight of the situation pressed down on him physically. When Samuel reached the storage room, he found Alex sitting cross-legged, on the floor, his face pale and drawn. "We can't stay here," Samuel whispered urgently. "They're getting closer." Alex nodded, though his expression betrayed his exhaustion. "I know," he replied softly. "But where do we go? There's nowhere safe in this place." Samuel hesitated, his mind racing through possibilities. Then, an idea struck him. A risky one, but perhaps their only chance. "Follow me," he said firmly. "And trust me." Leading Alex through the labyrinthine halls of the hospital required precision and nerve. Samuel chose paths that avoided the most heavily guarded areas, sticking to service corridors and stairwells rarely used by staff. At one point, they nearly collided with a group of soldiers rounding a corner. Samuel pulled Alex into a nearby utility closet just in time, holding his breath as the footsteps passed mere inches away. Alex's breathing was shallow, his body trembling with suppressed panic. Samuel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, silently urging him to stay calm. Finally, they reached the basement, an area largely ignored by the soldiers due to its lack of patient rooms or critical equipment. Samuel guided Alex to a small, maintenance tunnel he remembered from years ago. It led outside, bypassing the main entrances entirely. The entrance was concealed behind a stack of old crates, dusty and forgotten. Samuel shoved the crates aside and pried open the rusted metal hatch. A blast of cool night air greeted them, carrying with it the scent of damp earth. "This is our way out," Samuel said. "But once we're outside, we'll have to move fast." Climbing into the tunnel wasn't easy. Alex winced with every movement, his wound clearly causing him pain. Samuel helped him navigate the narrow passage, supporting his weight as best he could. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a secluded alleyway behind the hospital. The darkness provided some cover, but they couldn't afford to linger. Samuel glanced around, spotting a delivery van parked nearby. Its engine idled quietly, likely waiting for supplies to be loaded. Without hesitation, Samuel motioned for Alex to follow him toward the vehicle. Reaching the van, Samuel tapped lightly on the driver's window. A young man rolled it down, looking surprised. "What's going on?" he asked. Samuel leaned close, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully," he said. "There are soldiers searching the hospital. We need your help to get out of here." The driver hesitated, clearly torn between fear and curiosity. Before he could refuse, Samuel added, "If you don't help us, innocent lives will be at risk, including yours." Something in Samuel's tone must have convinced him, because after a moment the driver nodded reluctantly. "Get in," he muttered. The ride was tense, with Alex crouched low in the back of the van to avoid being seen. Samuel sat up front, keeping watch through the windshield. They drove through deserted streets, avoiding checkpoints by taking side roads and alleys. Eventually, they arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a location Samuel had arranged with General Harper earlier. As they stepped out of the van, Samuel thanked the driver, slipping him a wad of cash for his trouble. The young man didn't say a word as he sped away, leaving Samuel and Alex alone in the eerie silence of the empty building. Inside the warehouse, they waited anxiously for General Harper's reinforcements. Hours passed, each one dragging longer. Then the last. Alex paced restlessly, occasionally wincing as his injury flared up. Samuel tried to reassure him, but even he couldn't ignore the gnawing doubt creeping into his mind. What if General Harper's team didn't arrive in time? What if the soldiers traced their movements and found them here? The uncertainty was maddening, yet there was nothing to do but wait. Just as dawn began to break, the distant rumble of engines interrupted the quiet. Samuel peered through a crack in the boarded-up windows, spotting several unmarked vehicles, pulling up outside. Men and women dressed in plainclothes stepped out, their movements efficient and purposeful. Among them was General Harper herself, her sharp gaze scanning the area before heading inside. When she saw Samuel, relief washed over her face. "You've got quite the mess on your hands," she said dryly, though her tone carried a hint of admiration. General Harper wasted no time getting down to business. She listened intently as Samuel and Alex recounted everything that had happened, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. When they finished, she turned to Alex. "If what you're saying is true, then we need hard evidence," she said. "Names, dates, locations, anything that can prove your story." Alex hesitated before reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small USB drive. "It's all here," he said. "Everything I managed to gather before my team was attacked." "General." Harper took the USB drive, her expression grim. "This changes things," she admitted, "but it also puts you in greater danger. Whoever is behind this won't stop until they silence you permanently." Samuel stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. "Then we'll make sure they don't," he declared. "Whatever it takes, with General Harper's team providing protection." Samuel and Alex prepared to leave the warehouse and head to a secure location. For the first time since the ordeal began, Samuel allowed himself to believe they might actually succeed. But deep down, he knew the fight was far from over. Powerful people didn't give up easily, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Still, Samuel felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about saving Alex anymore, it was about exposing the truth no matter how dangerous it might be. The secure location turned out to be a remote cabin, nestled deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town. General Harper's team had arranged everything meticulously: food supplies, medical equipment, and even a generator to power the small space. It was rustic but functional, providing just enough comfort for Alex to recover while Samuel tended to his wound. Despite the quiet surroundings, neither of them could fully relax. Every rustle of leaves outside or distant sound of an engine sent their nerves on edge. They knew they weren't safe yet, not until the conspiracy was exposed and those responsible were brought to justice. Samuel spent most of his time cleaning and redressing Alex's injury, ensuring it didn't become infected. The bullet had grazed his side, leaving a jagged scar that would take weeks to heal properly. Alex endured the process stoically, though his face often twisted in pain. Between treatments, they talked about the past, about what had led them to this moment, and about what might come next. Alex revealed more details about the operation he'd been part of, describing how his team had uncovered evidence of corruption involving high-ranking officials. "It wasn't just one person," Alex explained. "It was a network: politicians, military officers, corporate leaders. They were stealing millions, maybe billions, and covering it up with fake contracts and false reports." Samuel listened intently, his mind racing as he pieced together the scope of the conspiracy. It was staggering to think that such powerful people could operate so brazenly, confident that no one would dare challenge them. But now, thanks to Alex's bravery, and perhaps Samuel's stubbornness, they had a chance to fight back. Still, the question remained: how? Even with the USB drive containing the incriminating evidence, proving its authenticity would be difficult. And if they made a single misstep, they risked not only their lives but also the lives of anyone who supported them. General Harper checked in regularly, updating them on her progress. She had assembled a trusted team of investigators to analyze the data on the USB drive, verifying its contents and cross-referencing it with official records. So far, the findings were damning. The documents detailed illegal transactions, forged, Signatures and secret meetings held under the guise of classified operations. "This is bigger than we thought," Harper admitted during one call. "But it's also more dangerous. If word gets out that we're onto them, they'll retaliate. We need to move carefully." While Harper worked behind the scenes, Samuel focused on staying vigilant. He took turns with Alex keeping watch over the cabin, scanning the tree line for any sign of intruders. At night, they barricaded the doors and kept a flashlight close at hand, ready to act if needed. Sleep came in short bursts, interrupted by dreams of soldiers storming the cabin or Alex being dragged away in handcuffs. Each morning, Samuel woke feeling more exhausted than the night before, but he forced himself to keep going. There was too much at stake to give in to fatigue. One afternoon, as Samuel chopped firewood outside, he noticed something unusual: a car parked along the dirt road leading to the cabin. It was too far away to identify, but its presence worried him. He quickly gathered the logs and carried them inside, locking the door behind him. "We've got company," he told Alex, who immediately tensed. Together, they moved to a window, peering through the curtains to get a better look. The car sat motionless, its engine off. No one stepped out. For hours, they watched and waited, unsure whether the vehicle belonged to someone passing through or if it signaled trouble. Finally, as dusk fell, the car drove away, disappearing into the trees. Though relieved, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He decided to fortify their defenses, stacking furniture against the windows and setting up makeshift alarms using string and cans. If anyone tried to approach unnoticed, they'd hear it. Days turned into a week, and tension began to wear on them both. Alex grew restless, pacing the cramped space and muttering about wanting to do more. "I can't just sit here while they're out there ruining lives," he said angrily one evening. Samuel understood his frustration but reminded him of the stakes. "If you go out there unprepared, you'll end up dead or worse," he warned. "Patience isn't easy, but it's necessary." Their patience paid off when General Harper arrived unexpectedly, her face flushed with excitement. "We've done it," she announced breathlessly. "We verified the data and traced it back to several key players. Now we have enough to bring them down, if we act fast." She laid out a plan. They would leak the information to trusted journalists and government watchdogs simultaneously, creating a media storm that would force an investigation. At the same time, Harper's team would present the evidence directly to higher-ups within the military, bypassing the corrupt chain of command. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot. Over the next few days, Samuel and Alex prepared for the final push. Harper provided them with new identities and travel documents, ensuring they could disappear once the story broke. "You won't be able to go home," she warned Samuel. "Not for a long time. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Samuel hesitated only briefly before nodding. He had already sacrificed so much. Turning back now wasn't an option. On the chosen day, they executed the plan with precision. Journalists received encrypted files containing the evidence, while Harper's team delivered physical copies to military officials. Within hours, the story exploded across news outlets, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. Names were named, connections exposed, and careers crumbled overnight. The fallout was swift and brutal, with arrests made and investigations launched. For the first time in weeks, Samuel allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. But the victory came at a cost. As the dust settled, Samuel realized his old life was gone forever. His quiet retirement had been replaced by a new reality, one filled with uncertainty and danger. Still, he didn't regret his decision. Helping Alex had reignited a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years, reminding him that even in retirement, his skills and courage could make a difference. Together, they disappeared into the crowd, two ordinary faces among millions, carrying the weight of what they'd accomplished, and the knowledge that the fight for truth was far from over. The days following the leak were a whirlwind of chaos and revelation. News outlets around the country, and eventually the world, picked up the story, plastering headlines with the names of powerful individuals implicated in the conspiracy. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal, while corporations issued vague statements denying involvement. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies launched investigations, raiding offices and seizing documents in an effort to untangle the web of corruption. For Samuel and Alex, watching it all unfold from their hiding place was surreal. They had set the dominoes in motion, but now they could only wait and see where the pieces would fall. Despite the public outrage, not everyone welcomed the exposure. Powerful people don't surrender easily, and those implicated fought back fiercely. Some hired high-profile lawyers to discredit the evidence, claiming it was fabricated or obtained illegally. Others used their influence to pressure media organizations into softening their coverage. Rumors spread about shadowy figures threatening journalists and whistleblowers, warning them to stay silent. It became clear that even with the truth laid bare, the fight for justice wouldn't be straightforward or safe. Samuel and Alex remained cautious, knowing they were still targets. General Harper's team provided updates regularly, keeping them informed about developments and advising them on how to stay hidden. "This isn't over yet," Harper warned during one call. "Some of these people have resources you can't imagine. Don't let your guard down." Her words reinforced what they already knew. Freedom came at a price, and complacency could cost them everything. Living under assumed identities was harder than either of them expected. Samuel missed the simplicity of his old life, the quiet mornings on his porch, the routine of tending to patients, the sense of belonging in a small town. Now he wandered unfamiliar streets, blending into crowds and avoiding eye contact. Alex struggled too, battling guilt over the sacrifices others had made for him and uncertainty about his future. The two men leaned on each other during the darkest moments, finding solace in shared purpose and mutual respect. One evening, as they sat together in a rented apartment, Alex broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" he asked quietly, staring out the window at the city lights below. Samuel thought for a moment before answering. "Yes," he admitted, "but I also know this. Doing nothing would have been worse. Sometimes you have to take a stand even when it costs you." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Alex nodded slowly, a flicker of determination returning to his eyes. "Then we keep going," he said firmly, "no matter what." As weeks turned into months, the tide began to shift. Investigators uncovered more evidence, linking additional individuals to the conspiracy. Several high-profile arrests were made, sending shockwaves through the political and corporate worlds. Public pressure mounted, forcing authorities to act decisively. Slowly but surely, the corrupt network started to unravel. Though some managed to evade accountability, many faced justice, their reputations shattered and careers destroyed. For Samuel, the turning point came when General Harper called with unexpected news. "They're offering immunity," she explained. "If you testify about what happened from the beginning, you'll be protected. Same goes for Alex." The offer was tempting but also risky. Testifying meant stepping into the spotlight, exposing themselves to scrutiny and potential retaliation. Yet it also represented closure, a chance to ensure that their efforts hadn't been in vain. After much deliberation, Samuel and Alex agreed to cooperate. Protected by federal agents, they emerged from hiding to share their story publicly. Their testimony captivated audiences worldwide, shedding light on the lengths to which corrupt individuals would go to protect their interests. Samuel spoke with the authority of someone who had seen the worst humanity had to offer, yet refused to lose faith in its better nature. Alex, though younger and less experienced, conveyed a raw honesty that resonated deeply with listeners. Together they painted a vivid picture of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of truth. In the aftermath, life began to settle into a new rhythm. While neither Samuel nor Alex could return to their old lives entirely, they found ways to move forward. Samuel volunteered at clinics serving underserved communities, channeling his skills toward helping those who needed it most. Alex worked alongside advocacy groups dedicated to government transparency and accountability, using his experience to push for systemic change. Both men carried scars, physical and emotional, but they wore them as badges of honor, reminders of battles fought and won. Though the danger never fully disappeared, they learned to live with it. They stayed vigilant, trusting only a select few, and always looking over their shoulders. But they also allowed themselves moments of peace, cherishing the simple joys life offered. Samuel took long walks in parks, marveling at the beauty of nature. Alex reconnected with family members he thought he'd lost forever, rebuilding bonds strained by years of secrecy and fear. In these moments, they found hope, not just for themselves, but for a world that, despite its flaws, still held the potential for good. Years later, when asked about their ordeal, Samuel often reflected on the choices that defined it. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," he would say with a modest smile. "I just did what I thought was right." And perhaps that was the lesson, that heroism isn't always about grand gestures or superhuman feats. Sometimes it's simply about standing firm when the odds are stacked against you, refusing to look away when the truth demands to be seen. In the end, Samuel and Alex proved that even ordinary people, armed with courage and conviction, can spark extraordinary change.